everybody. Welcome back to the PB&J podcast, where we discuss pioneers and builders right here in the River City of Jacksonville. Today, I have Caleb Garrett with me. Caleb, he's the Director of Development for the Coggin College of Business at University of North Florida. He's also a two-time board member. We're excited to get into that as well. But in the interim, Caleb, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Proud to be called the pioneer and builder. Love that.
Yeah, very much a pioneer, man. Anytime you're putting in work at the big university of a city and trying to grow and expand it, man, that's some pioneer stuff if I've ever heard it. So I'm very happy to have you on and to talk about it today.
Great. Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. I know you and I, we've been connected for a little while, so I have a little understanding of your journey. Where you went to school wasn't necessarily in Jacksonville, but you made your way up here, and ever since then, you've worked your way into the director of development for a couple of different schools at the university. I believe you were first at the College of Engineering and moved over to the College of Business. I'll just start there. Let's let the people get to know you a little bit. What does that job entail? And, what made you move from engineering to business? And walk me through how that looks today.
Yeah, and I can back up a little bit because I'm a listener. I'm also a listener to the podcast so I didn't grow up in Orange Park. So I went to school in South Florida, Palm Atlantic University. My wife's a UNF alum. I grew up in Orange Park, so very much about the city and about the area here, and about seeing our area grow, which we talked about a lot. But kind of found my way to UNF. Yeah, I actually went to school for biblical studies and worked in a couple churches and ended up at a faith-based nonprofit. Nonprofits, do fundraising, like hospitals and universities as well. So as I got further into the field in the nonprofit space, wanted to grow in that field and wanted to grow in that skill set. And UNF was a great place to do that. So joined UNF a little over 5 years ago at the College of Business as the Assistant Director of Development. And then after a few years, moved over to the College of Computing, Engineering, Construction, and was there for a couple of years as the Director of Development, and now moved back to Coggin. So it's kind of homecoming to come back to the College of Business where I started out. And honestly, those two colleges aren't terribly different in that there's a real professional focus. So I'll back up. And so Director of Development, some people are confused what that means. That means that I oversee the fundraising operations for our college specifically. So each college has folks like me who dual report to the UNF Foundation and to the colleges. So we're kind of the boots on the ground people who can talk with donors and business partners, but we're enough in the college where we know the faculty, we know the programs, and you kind of got to specialize a little bit to be able to speak the lingo. But I was going to say that Coggin, the Coggin College of Business, and CCEC is that Computing, Engineering, Construction. They're similar in that there's a real professional focus. So my colleagues and education, they kind of have a really different kind of donor base and folks that they deal with, where I have a lot more alumni who just by nature of what they study have higher earning potential, and companies that hire really directly from those colleges. So yeah, it was kind of an easy shift moving back and forth, but love being at Coggin now. A lot of growth happening. So at some point we might hear a loud crash because about 35 yards that way, they're doing some major construction, bringing two of our main kind of Coggin buildings together, and combining them into one, adding over 20,000 square feet of usable space, classroom space, lab space. And there have just been people are off campus for winter. There's been some crashing and some loud noises today. But yeah, that's kind of a little about me, my journey, how I got here. And yeah.
Yeah, very cool, man. Thank you. A couple of questions just came to me while you were discussing what you do. Number one, for those who don't know, Coggin's a pretty big name in Jacksonville. Coggin, is that an alumni, or is that they came back and sponsored the actual college and program? How did that come to be, and how long has Coggin been a part of the UNF?
That's interesting because Luther and Blanche Coggin, local philanthropists, you'll see their names. I remember I used to work out at the Riverside YMCA. I'd walk by the Coggin name. You go to different hospitals, things like that. You're going to see a lot of the Coggin name, local philanthropists. And no, Luther, not an alumni, and I don't believe actually he ever went to college at all. Really valued education and valued the impact it had. He hired Coggin students. It's funny that I'll meet with people, and I mean, just in the last couple of months, I met with two people who both said, Luther Coggin kind of gave me my start, or I worked at a Coggin dealership through college. And so yeah, he named the college. I believe it was in the 90s, like early 90s. Maybe I might need to Google that.
So about 30 years.
Yeah, but so yeah, a number of years with a large gift that was also at that time matched by the state, which made that the Coggin College of Business. So one of our two named colleges at UNF, we have, or three, I guess, do have an honors college as well. So Brooks College of Health, and then the Hicks Honors College. Yeah.
Awesome. And the second question I had, you work with donors, you do a lot of fundraising for the college. Two-part question. What does that entail? And secondly, how much as a percentage do you need to raise annually? I understand UNF's a public university, so I think that they get funds from other areas. But, when you guys go to fundraise, what exactly are you utilizing that money for? And, just, I guess, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, no, yeah. So there are obviously other ways that like universities, make money, but from student fees and tuition and those kind of things. But when we talk about philanthropy, it's typically things that really take us kind of over the edge. So things like when Luther Coggin named the college, he was establishing professorships, which gave us extra dollars to hire really top tier faculty that we could bring in. Also scholarships, those kind of never go out of style. Tuition can be expensive, and then also living on campus and books and all kind of other things add up. Florida, it's actually relatively cheap to get a college education. So you could come to UNF and pay less. So if you're out of state, think about this, particularly the Northeast, you can come to UNF, pay out of state tuition and pay less than your in-state tuition in at 35 states, I think, or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Florida, very cheap. Compared to a lot of other states. But scholarships, always a need. UNF particularly, we have the number always hovers around 33% first-generation college students. So that means their parents never went to college. So there's all kind of support that we try to offer students, in that situation. Because if you can't go to mom and dad for hey, how do I pay this bill? What do I study habits, things like that. Our president talks about we have to sometimes be the family for a lot of those students and offer some guidance. So when I think about kind of philanthropy at a higher education institution, it's a lot of things that kind of bring us over and kind of set us apart. Not as much, keeping the lights on. We can do a lot of that, but it's things that help us recruit top faculty and top students, help support students, and make sure they have a great experience. So that's kind of that piece. And then I think you asked about kind of what the job entails. And it's, there are probably a lot of similarities to sales in that we work in a CRM, we have prospects, we develop proposals for kind of major gift donors. But there's always this other kind of aspect where we have a lot of corporate involvement, like I mentioned before. UNF established in 1972, and then you don't have, so even at that time, you have just juniors and seniors attending. And it's a lot of students from around here who are working full time, who are older professionals. So actually in the life cycle of kind of our institution, we're actually kind of just getting to that point where we're having alumni who had a traditional kind of freshman, sophomore college experience who are now hitting that what I call that prime giving age, which is, your mandatory, retirement distribution, things like that, where you're hitting your 60s and 70s and thinking about your legacy and thinking about those type of things. But we have a lot of non-alumni who give as well. Individuals who are just in Jacksonville and see the value of the workforce development that we do here and the experience that we provide. So I focus a lot with alumni. But it's anyone that maybe gets on board with the mission and vision of what we do at UNF.
Yeah, that makes a little bit of sense. The guy whose name is on the building isn't even an alumni. So no, I think that's wonderful. And the reason I started this podcast was to learn things and to sit here and say oh, this college has only been here, this university has only been here for 50 years is mind blowing to me. I've never looked it up, but I just thought it was a a longstanding university that was associated with the city of Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's like you kind of, I feel like sometimes I just associate that with any university. And you think like, yeah, all these universities have been around since the 1800s, but that's not the case. In fact, UCF, USF, a lot of these schools in Florida started around that same time, late 60s, early.
Yeah, you touched on the out-of-state tuition being cheaper than a lot of in-state tuition. And I know right now Jacksonville's got like this movement, right? We're just trying to shake things up and be progressive and turn into a tech hub. We have a mayor who's trying to make the proclamation that Jacksonville is going to be the small business capital of the Southeast. Does UNF focus on trying to find people that are out of state and bring them to the university? Is that a big core requirement, is trying to diversify our talent pool?
Yeah, so that's been a more recent kind of thing. So yeah, past years, most people would think UNF commuter school. It's a lot of people from local community, and we still get a lot of Florida students. Like that's still the bulk of our students that attend. But no, definitely more of an emphasis on out of state recruiting, out of state. I think that's like why I think I know that that factoid.
Yeah,
because I hear about it from like our admissions team and other people who are out there who are pounding the pavement and encourage the students to come here. And what's nice, and when I think about the benefits of UNF to the community, is generally the number, it kind of moves a little bit, but about 60% of our students, 60 to 70, stay in Jacksonville after they graduate. So if we're pulling students, from the Northeast or from Georgia or from other parts of Florida, what happens is we're in a unique situation where we're not in Gainesville, we're not in Tallahassee, and we have lots of work opportunities for students. So I see students all the time that they get locked into an internship freshman year, sophomore year, and they start their career. So after graduation, they're kind of locked into the city, and they've kind of fallen in love with the beach and just the great weather and the great area we live in. But yeah, so we end up being often like a net gain for the community when you think about workforce development, which is pretty cool. It's something I like to share.
Yeah, thank you for sharing it, because 60 to 70% is a number substantially higher than I would have expected. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad that there's a recruiting effort towards getting the talent here. And then a follow-up question to everything we've been talking about is I'm sure that UNF gets to boast some success stories here in the city, people who have gone on to establish themselves as entrepreneurs, or people who have built substantial businesses that they've headquartered here in Jacksonville. And I'm sure most of them went through the Coggin College of Business to get to where they're going. So do you guys tout any particular stories in general? Are there any success stories that you can think of that have moved their way through UNF?
Yeah, definitely. I think of people so we have a business advisory council, which is our dean's council. And you have a couple CEOs, founders there, guy named Don Hune with Lift Power. But I guess it's more like a lot of C-suite folks. So our CFO of Regency Centers here locally, Mike Moss, he's him and his wife, both UNF alum. Also on that board, Chief Human Resources Officer at Energy Authority, Susan Boggs. So there's, I think of a lot of like, you notice that in the C-suite at a lot of different companies is you're going to see, especially, I guess a lot of CFOs is what I tend to think. So recently joined our Dean's Council as well is Greg Motto, who's with the CFO of NASCAR. So he's a little further south, but he drives up. And his son also attended UNF. So it's cool also to see more of that going on at UNF. We talked about being a young university. You got these success stories, but another success story is seeing like generations of the UNF folks. So when I was in computing, someone that I met, I guess his title changed. He was a Black Knight. He was the Chief Information Security Officer at Black Knight. And now it's ICE. So I think they've kind of changed the roles there. But he's great. He serves on their kind of Dean's Council, same kind of thing. But his dad went to UNF, he went to UNF, and I believe. But yeah, he had a couple kids that have gone to UNF. And you just don't hear about that a lot just because time-wise. So I love hearing those stories too, because it's connectivity to the university kind of in a different way.
That's why this show exists. We don't know enough about our own institutions. The public does at least. And so we're trying to highlight these fun stories of these things you don't know. And I'm sitting here talking to you. We're on the same board. I think we've hung out 3 times in the last week. I didn't know that NASCAR CFO was on the board at UNF. I mean, that's a really big draw and really big pull for people who are trying to find significant names to attached to their university and plant their flag on. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I know, very cool.
Yeah, I know we've had a couple other success stories. I mean, we have a mutual friend, Jordan Walker, who's, just made a huge name for himself and serial entrepreneur, has built a couple of businesses and is probably one of the most successful people I know. So kudos to him. And I know he attributes a lot of what he did to his experience at UNF.
Yeah, no, it's the entrepreneurship space is kind of interesting at UNF. We had some entrepreneurs to UNF here recently, a couple alumni. I got him, Jeremy Vaughn, who also has started a couple companies I think you may know. And then Brian Croft, who was HC Brands. I don't think he didn't start it. His dad started his company, but his dad also went to UNF. But he kind of took it and brought them to the next kind of level into the future, which is kind of a different type of kind of entrepreneurship there. Yeah, no, it's cool to see, especially like a lot of young alumni like Jordan and Hunter. You guys see what they're doing, follow them on LinkedIn and just see kind of where they're heading. And it's cool to see them kind of just share kind of the UNF brand kind of wherever they go, because that's right there on their LinkedIn page or their and part of their story.
Yeah, no, they're very vocal about the UNF being attached to who they are. So I love it. I'm going to put something together. It's going to put you on the spot a little bit, but it would be kind of unique. Let's say I'm a student and I get offers from the University of Florida, Florida State, and then UNF. And we'll throw JU in the mix. We'll throw a private college in there. Why would somebody pick UNF over those other three?
That's great. So I sometimes will brag about how good I am at this, honestly. But more so, what I always, because I've had a couple opportunities to talk with students like that, but it's also like I'm talking with the parents. And normally, because the parents, they play a big role in that decision. I mean, it's kind of funny to hear about that with like our people that kind of work with admissions. Is part of the marketing is to the parents. But I'll just tell them, hey, here's who I met with in the last week, who I know is recruiting at UNF. And they're like, all right, what kind of job are you interested in? They're like, well, it was particular. There was a company, or there was a young man he wanted to study construction management. And I was telling him about, Miller Electric, and talking about, you could go to Haskell, you could go to all these companies that are headquartered here that are great opportunities. And I said, freshman year, you can start today. You can start there and you can really get a feel for what you want to do. So, I always shared this one story of a kid over there. I say kid. My wife gets on me when I call him kids. A young man over there, yeah. So he was a civil engineering major, and when I met him his senior year, he was on his 6th internship. So he had done a small shop in the engineering space. He had done a general contractor. He had done a huge shop. He went out of state for a summer. So it was like by the time he got to his senior year, he was like, I know exactly what I want to do. I know exactly where I want to be, what company, what type of company, what role. And, you don't always get that. That's so when I'm talking to like students and parents, it's like, you can take advantage of this business community and be way ahead of, I know where I was like at 20, I was mowing lawns, I think at 22, 23, I didn't really know kind of where I was going to be landing, but I see students that are really just savvy about their career path and career space just by being at UNF. And we put a large emphasis on jobs just because we're here, and that is something we can kind of push and promote. So that would be my sell, is like, hey, mom, dad, and student, if you care about your career, then come here. You can start working. You can work fall, spring. You don't have to just do summer internships. And our basketball team's good. I know we don't have football. Yeah. But you can go watch the Jags on Sunday, and you can enjoy still like that college experience. Yeah.
Yeah. The Jags might not be the big draw. Like, they might not be the big sell. Depends. In 2017, I'm sure you guys were able to pitch that, but it's a little rough right now. The UNF basketball team, though, you're 100% right. They've had some really big wins on the road against some power schools this year. You and I watched the game Saturday, and they won heavily. And speaking of, let's talk about that as a draw. The gym has been renovated. I personally think it's the nicest gym in Jacksonville, and I'm not just here to blow smoke. That gym is great. It's got an outdoor pool, lane pool. It's got a rock climbing wall. It's got every piece of equipment you can imagine, right? Right next door is the arena that's been completely revamped. Talk about that. Well, talk about the process and the fact that it's done, and maybe do you guys use that as a tool to show people around and show that you guys are consistently staying progressive and consistently trying to keep things current and fresh, and walk through the whole UNF basketball process, program, building, everything.
So not with athletics, but I can give my perspective. I'm a fan, so I'm happy to speak to that. So you joined me for another night in our new, relatively new Loan People suite. So it was Bank of England Mortgage, now they're Loan People. But it's this sweet experience at our UNF basketball games where we have open bar, catered food. I don't know what was served when you were there. But recent game I was at had Strings Brewery and their Alabama White Wings, which I was like super high on. I was entertaining donors, but like kind of hiding so I could just like throw down these wings. So just a really, really awesome experience. So they've just in the last 5 years since I've been here. So CSI companies gave a large gift to kind of name the floor. So you'll see their logo kind of on the floor where they redid the floor, they redid the sound system, redid the lights, and it really is just a high quality experience. You'd expect when you go, like if you go see like the Sharks or like the Iceman, or you see something like that, you expect to see, a level of like professionalism. And it's there. Yeah. So me and some friends over there, we always talk about, man, it's D1 basketball. It should be kind of the second hottest ticket in town, maybe after the Jags, just because that's kind of top level. So really just great experience. Redid seats, and just all the last 5 years, just really upgraded that arena to make it a cool experience. And then also the product on the floor has been really good this year. So we beat South Carolina and they just beat the brakes off Georgia Tech. So early on in the year. And those are huge kind of wins for our program. So January is when kind of league play starts for the ASUN. And, that's when we're hoping to see that continued success. Unless you've been tracking, unless you're a college basketball fan, Tennessee, I think, is still number one right now in college basketball. But their best player, Chaz Lanier, played at UNF last year.
Really?
So, and I'm probably going to get drafted. He's incredible. He's a great three-point shooter. So last year, he was one of the most efficient players in college basketball at UNF. And I remember like telling friends, like, hey, this guy, like, you need to I brought my brother to a game, just like, you just got to watch this guy play. Because he dropped like 34, I think, that game. I brought my brother. Because it was something like this. I can't remember exactly. He was like number one in 3-point percentage, and he's like number 2 in 3-point attempts. So he's chucking a lot of them, but he was making them. But Chaz Lanier, you'll see his name, plays for Tennessee, and he's continued his success there. So I know that. I mean, I don't recruit for UNF athletics, but I'm sure that's a great story to use. Is like, look, it's kind of, we're in a weird world of like NIL and the transfer portal, but to be able to say, hey, come here, come here. Maybe we're only going to get you for 2 years, but we're going to get great players. Then you can kind of move on and go spread your wings, maybe at a Power 5 school. But it's interesting to see how we kind of navigate that NIL world, because, we watch it like in college football a lot where, you see quarterbacks making millions of dollars, but it impacts schools like UNF in some different kind of ways where we lose a lot of guys to transfer portal, but we also get a lot of transfers. So it's interesting to see.
I didn't know that. I'm glad you shared it. Now I'm going to go at least take a look. The one thing I did look up before we went to the game on Saturday, for anybody who likes excitement, I was honestly shocked. In all of 1A basketball, NCAA 1A basketball, the UNF is third in points scored.
I believe that.
Isn't that insane?
I think they did set their all-time point record one of their games this year, but like that Georgia Tech win, they put up over 100. So they're scoring points. We've always kind of been a 3-point, kind of live and die by the 3. So it's kind of cool. This year, it doesn't seem like it's that same style, which 3 is great, but it seems like we can score in a lot of ways. So that's cool to watch.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And the one thing that really stood out, I know you talked about the floor and whatnot, the scoreboard situation, I don't know, the centerpiece, I don't know what you would call that. That thing's cool.
It's big. It's not quite Jerry's World, but it's right there. It's prominent. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was like a professional hockey game. Like the way it was set up, it was cylindrical. The graphics were great. They were able to use it for the warm-ups and do the announcements for all the kids and stuff. And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah. The marketing team with UNF athletics is just awesome. So they do cool hype videos. In 2017 or 2016, whenever they made their run in the Final Four, they made it to not Final Four, not that far.
The tournament, though.
They made it to the tournament. When they made it to the tournament, there's a GIF of our Coach Driscoll, has been here for years, of him yelling lunch GIF. And they use that and stuff, and it's funny, and it's like they don't take themselves too seriously, but it's cool, like hype videos and stuff. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. And my best friend in the world, his name's Justin Andrade. I know he's gonna watch this at some point. It is hands down our favorite gift. If anything as simple as like, oh my God, I had tacos today comes up, we send each other that gift religiously. It is the best thing that's happened to our text exchanges.
Love that. Well, yeah, I do a lot of people internally, like on Teams. Oh, search UNF, and that's what comes up. You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Last thing about UNF, because there's a couple other things we want to talk about here, not especially nonprofit related. How nice is it to have the town center where it is in relation to UNF? You don't even have to speak about recruiting at this point. Maybe even for your own self or people who we might want to consider trying to convince them to see a UNF game or two, like, hey, go watch the game. And then once you're done, you can go have dinner or shop or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's got to be, we were talking about FSU, we were talking about UF, we were talking about all this other stuff. It's got to be a very hopeful thing to have all of that located a mile from your university.
Yeah, no, yeah, all that restaurants, yeah, we'll have a lot of events there, and it's easy kind of to get off campus and not ask too much maybe of people because you're just going right there. But even now, what's interesting, like off gate, you got so much more business out there too, which is really cool because so we did this thing this year with our Foundations of Business course, which is like intro level, just kind of exposure to different areas of business for freshmen, sophomores. But we rented the bus and we took all these students to like Deutsche Bank for a little bit and popped over to Fortegra, because they're all just right there, So site visits and things like that makes it really easy because even just during class time, the professor can say, hey, we're going to drive over to whatever the company and visit there. So this is kind of, downtown, awesome. That has different stuff going on, but this is like a different kind of hub, right here at the town center and at, Gate, JTB, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Gate. Interesting. Ever since the IKEA went in, it's been kind of nuts. So like on the other side, all that used to be trees.
Yeah. Like the steakhouse.
Yeah.
There.
You got a Foxtail coffee situation going on.
Yeah.
Availity's buildings there, the FBI buildings there, Dun and Bradstreet's. Yeah. And if you keep going down just a little bit further, you find an office called PS27. And PS27 just happens to be an entity here in Jacksonville. Some people know, some people don't, what they do. Excited to talk about it, but you're on the board. And you've been on the board for a little less than a year. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Yeah. And so you joined the board. First off, let's do an overview. What is PS27? Why is it important to the community? Especially why is it important to UNF? And let's kind of unpack that and talk about how important they are and kind of the stuff they're doing in 2025.
Yeah, so like you're aware, but I always have to kind of distinguish for people. There's PS27 Ventures, which is the venture capital firm, started by Jim Stallings, and they invest in companies and they're awesome. So we're on the board of the PS27 Foundation, right? Yeah. So, and that is kind of their outreach arm, which, a lot of people don't even make. I don't know that I even made the distinction before I joined the board there. Because, as an outsider, I would see all the great events that they do. So the PS27 Foundation is that outreach arm that puts on events that encourage entrepreneurship and empower entrepreneurs and what have been underrepresented areas for entrepreneurship. So there's a female founders forum and a Black founders forum. And those are kind of two of the big ones, but there's also veterans founders and a new one this year with Hispanic founders forum. So I know female founders forum, this will be the 10th year of doing that, but they host a lot of them at UNF, which is cool. But they bring in, huge speakers, huge leaders. I think last year's female founder forum speaker was the CEO founder of care.com. So, and it's really kind of become what it's still a design, I think, for entrepreneurs to come and be encouraged and learn. But now I've noticed that I see just a lot of corporate representation, and especially like female leaders of their companies who are there, who want to learn and want to grow in their field, whatever that is, and hear from these great speakers on these great events.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to expand on the Founders Forums events, because people are going to be watching this and kind of have some curiosity behind it. And I'll give a little bit of color and then, I'll let you kind of fill in the gaps. But 3 of them, the Females Founders Forum, the Black Founders Forum, and the Hispanic Founders Forum, they're high energy events. they're pitch style events, right? So entrepreneurs apply to pitch, and if they are selected, they get to go up on stage in front of a couple of judges and in front of the audience. Which caveat, in the audience is full of investors, right? Jim famously told a story about somebody that went to the Black Founders Forum, didn't pitch, and still walked away with a large investment just from rubbing shoulders with somebody who was in the private equity space. But they're high energy. People come in, they pitch their companies, they pitch their ideas, where they are, where they want to be, what the money could be helpful for. And then, the crowd rallies behind all these people, and winner walks away with some cash. But, how important is it? The winners win money. That's great. And they get to invest in the business. But I still feel like there's a really good exposure for people who don't win, and why it's important for people, especially here in Jacksonville. We want Jacksonville people to apply and pitch. Like what all can people get from attending? What all can people get from pitching? I'm just kind of help me fill in the gaps there.
Yeah. So I kind of lean heavy into the speaker part, but the pitch competition is like kind of the main show. That's kind of what concludes, those events. But I think, the value, and we talked about this before, kind of offline, is the entrepreneurship kind of ecosystem in Jacksonville is kind of small, kind of tight. There aren't a lot of, are there other, are there other venture capital firms? I don't know that there's another firm based in Jacksonville. Yeah.
If there is, I am not aware of them. And if they're out there, I would love to talk to you so that we can get you some publicity, because I do not. I've been here 18 years, and PS27 is the only one I know about.
Yeah, though there are definitely like angel investor groups and other groups like that. But it feels like when I think of those events, I think everyone kind of comes to the table. Like to your point, even there were people that pitched, that didn't win anything, but the connections that they made ended up, they were able to get some investors. So I think just they're large scale events that bring everyone to the table kind of in the entrepreneurship space. So we always try to encourage students to go, just to hear about different career paths and different kind of opportunities for starting businesses, but also go network and get out there and meet just a great group of folks that come out to those events.
Yeah, 100%. For anybody listening in any way, shape, or form curious about PS27, follow on LinkedIn. We did an event at Kendra Scott not too long ago. I don't even think people had to pay to show up, but you can sit there and network with people who are doing really big things and really cool things in Jacksonville. You could have had some wine, shook some hands, and we put on events like that all year long. So just if any interest at all comes of being a part of PS27, what they're doing, follow there. While I'm talking about that, PS27 is looking for volunteers, right?
Yes, we are. So I think I have it written somewhere. I think one of our foundation committees, the fundraising committee is looking for volunteers, then the programs committee. So I think the ask is only, a few hours, kind of a week, but looking for, volunteers interested just in the space, interested in seeing what we're doing, maybe potential board members, if that's something you want to do in the future. Looking for volunteers to help just support some of those events.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Let's put a bow on PS27. I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad we brought it up. But one of the probably the thing I was most important to me, probably the thing I was most interested in, is that you're on the board of Youth Crisis Center. And I want to learn more, as you are aware, and as the listeners are going to become more aware. I'm trying to steer this ship into the nonprofit space and highlight what people are doing. So can you kind of give a high level overview of what the Youth Crisis Center is doing and what their importance is to the city of Jacksonville?
Yeah. So, it's a space I'm pretty passionate about, like the faith-based nonprofit that I used to work at. It's called Florida Baptist Children's Home. It operates a lot of similar programming to support, kids or a lot of times young adults who are part of maybe the foster care system or in need of maybe like crisis care. So passionate kind of about them. What blows me away about Youth Crisis Center, they're a very Jacksonville. They're Jacksonville based here. I believe one of their founders was like former like city councilwoman in Jacksonville. Like they're very, very much here in the community. They've been around. We just had 50th anniversary celebration. That was last year. So cool thing about Youth Crisis Center is just how many areas they touch and why sometimes it's crazy people don't really know about it, because all the things that they do. The name kind of some of the big things they do is they do have like a a crisis residential care center on campus for, it says youth, but we're talking like teenagers, kind of older teenagers who, for whatever reason, are homeless or in kind of a crisis situation. So there's residential care and counseling services for those students. But they have all kind of other things that they do, which is neat to hear about, like going into schools and working with students who show maybe behavioral problems, and teaching them skills for navigating anger and issues that they have there. They have a new program now where they're working with fathers particularly, and I think there were dollars available from the government. That was kind of an initiative I think maybe the governor was putting on. I can't remember exactly. But everything from residential care to in schools to fathers, and the new big thing, not just fathers, but they're starting. It stands for MILLS, or MILLS is the name of the program, but it's maternity independent living something. But what they are is they're tiny homes. Well, maybe I'm not a great board member, sorry, but it's a tiny home community for expectant mothers who have found themselves homeless or found themselves in rough financial situations. Where now on their campus, they're just broke ground recently, and they got some money from the state to start this, got some private dollars. But so these expectant mothers are going to have kind of a place where they can, I guess have their baby, and then maybe not have their baby there, but kind of start early motherhood in a place that's stable. And I know this from kind of my previous work at the children's home is you see like a lot of nonprofits in those spaces trying to do things that are like preventative in care. So we could wait till all these kids are in the foster care system, or we can kind of wrap our arms around these mothers and support them and help them get on their feet and help them get in a good situation to support those students, so that they don't end up kind of in that foster care system or the juvenile, detention or,
any other form of, I get it. I got to say, I find that to be utterly fascinating and ultimately incredible.
Yeah.
The forward thinking, the proactive nature of like, okay, listen, let's look at the pathway of a child's life in this particular situation. How can we get ahead of it? So the fact that you guys are thinking that way is fantastic. I have never heard of them. Obviously, I'm hoping we can highlight that a little bit here today and get some more eyes on it. But what is the Youth Crisis Center doing right now to get more eyeballs on the programs that they're doing, or get more people to understand who they are, the fact that they even exist?
Yeah. What are they doing now? So I guess with last year's kind of 50th anniversary, they were doing kind of a big kind of social push, had a big party kind of at the Ritz. But, I think that's an area, and it's kind of something we talked about. There's a lot of legislators that know the Youth Crisis Center is, but like a lot of their programming, it's not, people learn who UNF is because you can be a consumer of the product. You can come and you can, go to school.
It's also right off the highway. It's hard to miss.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
But the Youth Crisis Center isn't something that most of us, it's not something you like want to be directly involved. You don't want to be a consumer of that product, right? So I think there's right now like a lot more like social and marketing things that we can do to get the brand out there, name out there. One of the big things we do every year that's kind of more public is partner with the Hayden Hurst Foundation. You know Hayden Hurst?
The tight ends.
Yeah. So he's a Bulls guy, and he has a crazy story. I think there's like an ESPN, it's not like a 30 for 30, but like a shorter version of that, where when he was, so he's a baseball player, and I believe he was drafted to play baseball, but got the yips. Do you know what that is?
I'm very familiar with the yips.
You're familiar with the yips?
Anybody that watches Ted Lasso is familiar with the yips.
Right. Yeah. Daniel Rojas.
Right.
But he had like the yips and he stopped playing baseball, but had a lot of struggles with depression and alcohol use and all kind of things out of that, as you can imagine. But walked on in South Carolina because I think a friend of his from Bulls, but went through kind of the healing kind of time, got drafted. But now he's giving back a lot toward mental health and addictions and those type of issues. So Kathy Hurst is on the board with me. That's Hayden's mom. And so they partner for this golf tournament they put on, which is always great. And sometimes that's maybe because Hayden is attached to it, an NFL player. That's kind of where I think we see a little more kind of public facing things from the Youth Crisis Center. But no, I think, I think it's something we got to do a better job of, probably just get the brand out there and let people know it's a great opportunity to support a good organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And when approximately in the year is the golf tournament?
That's typically in March.
Okay, so it's coming up.
Yeah, February, March.
All right.
Yeah.
So we got to get the word out a little bit.
Yeah. No, I know foursomes go quick. I have my calendar, so I'm trying to check. Yeah, sure. Yeah, March 3rd. Yeah. But yeah, whole sponsors, things like that, all is still available. Yeah.
Awesome. If there was somebody who wanted to get involved, it could be donations, could be volunteer, could be anything. I know you guys get funding in different ways, but if somebody came across the Youth Crisis Center and like, man, that's really cool. I kind of align with that mission. I'd like to do something. What could they do and where could they go?
Yeah, so just because he's kind of my counterpart in that he works in development for Youth Crisis Center, Pete Hicks is always the guy like I would send people to because he's their development officer. So it's got all the giving things are there, but yeah, he's familiar with all the other ways that people get involved. He's really involved in downtown Rotary. So anytime we have like a new board member, it's always like, all right, are you part of Rotary? Like, yeah, I know Pete from. It's kind of the way a lot of people get plugged in, at least some professionals there. But I mean, you can go on their website, you can Google Youth Crisis Center. I think it's ycc.com. But I think there are volunteer opportunities, also giving, but I always steer people to Pete, but then obviously their website, there's opportunity to contact us and things like that.
Okay. Is there socials as well? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
Yeah, all that.
Okay. Just want to be able to funnel them there if that's the easiest way for them.
No, definitely. Yeah.
All right. I think what you're doing is great, dude. I think that organization's great. I know I have a firsthand look at what you're doing with PS27. I'm on the board with you. We're actually co-chairs of the same board. And there's so much of what you do in your regular job that's sales focused. We do a lot of fundraising for PS27. So there's a lot of sales going on there as well. So, the fact that you do so much for the university, the fact that you do so much for the foundation side of PS27, and the fact that you do so much in the involvement of making sure that kids grow up in the most normal way possible is incredibly commendable. I know that when we did this is a Jacksonville podcast, so I got to ask you a couple of Jacksonville questions. What's your favorite part of Jacksonville? What's Jacksonville doing well? Those are two questions. I want two answers, but if you have a favorite restaurant, a favorite beach, a favorite coffee shop, would love to hear about it. But also in the entrepreneurship community, small business community, the university community, whatever the case may be, what is Jacksonville doing right?
Yeah, so I'll start with, I'm a West Sider, so let me try to show some love maybe to the Riverside, Avondale, also Carolina Jacks, burger place. I'm sure you're nodding good.
Yeah, you don't get to be my size on accident. That's what I tell you.
There you go. Yeah. So we live like Chafee, where 10 and 295 meet, like that area. So yeah, we spend a lot of time at Riverside, kind of Avondale area. So yeah, also Carolina Jacks as far as like Jacksonville restaurants. Awesome. Cool Moose right there too. Never, me and my wife, we got small kids. So it's like when the kids aren't with us, we're still awake at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So it's like, hey, we'll go get breakfast. And Cool Moose is often the spot for us. And then things that Jacksonville's doing really well, man, I'd say, I kind of hate this answer because I'm in the business kind of college, but it's the business development. It's like, I think the work I see Jacks USA doing, I mean, just recently you saw this kind of incentive package for ICE. I don't know if you read about that.
I did. They just brought their headquarters or earmarked their headquarters here in Jacksonville. Yep.
Yeah. So I was thrilled by that because something that is frustrating me at times is when we lose kind of corporate headquarters here. Because as I'm trying to engage with companies, it's like, well, if you take the leadership away, it's harder to kind of connect. And they bring people on campus and have them really lay eyes on maybe students, things like that. So I love to see that. But then it always seems like, Jacks USA and their kind of business development team, go to a lot of those lunches and, maybe they're just putting on a good face, but I always walk away from this feeling like, man, I think we're heading in the right direction, bring a lot of great industry here. I'm somewhere back there's good to great, which are some principles I really like, but one of those is, there you go, like somebody like your hedgehog concept, like the thing that you're really good at. So I love seeing what they're doing, like, hey, logistics, financial services, healthcare, like these are the areas we're going to be focused on. And what's cool is like UNF aligns to a lot of those as well, which I love. So those are the things that get me really jazzed, but probably because I'm also in the UNF education kind of the talent development space in some ways. So yeah, I'd love to see that. And then I'm excited about the stadium in the future too. I'm excited to see what happens there. And growing up in Orange Park, my dad would like bring us downtown to like ride the monorail. And I mean, for just, it was empty then. I bring my kids to ride it sometime and we'll kind of ride around and we'll go to Sweet Pete's. But I feel like for as long as I can remember, at least, the talk has been like, hey, downtown, it's developing, something's happening. But I think right now there's like real data and dollars you can point to, like why we're kind of at a new stage for downtown development. So that's exciting to see too.
Yeah, it really is. The Stadium of the Futures, there's a couple of things that I learned from having Gregory Grant on the podcast. One of the big ones was in that multi-billion-dollar deal, they put $50 million aside to clean up the parks downtown, to put some real money into them and renovate them and spruce them up, which I think is great, that they're trying to beautify the areas that should be beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm also on board with you. I agree. I think it's going to be awesome. Counterpart, the other side of the fence here. What is Jacksonville? What can they do better? What do they need to do better? We're trying to become this different city. We're trying to liven things up. We're trying to get younger. We're trying to get more progressive. We're trying to get more tech focused. We're not there yet. So what can we do different?
Yeah, no, I think so. In the last like few months, I've spent some time in like Nashville and Atlanta, and I guess just both of them. Just at one point, I stood like in Nashville, when you're in front of like the Country Music Hall of Fame, you're sitting there. To your right is Bridgestone Arena. To your left is the Schermerhorn kind of orchestra. To your right, behind you is Broadway. But like you can stand in one spot, and it's like, all right, there's a lot going on right here. And Atlanta's kind of the same way, where you stand in downtown Atlanta, in that, what's the Olympic Park in Atlanta?
It's the Centennial Olympic Park.
Yeah. But there's the College Football Hall of Fame. There's the aquarium. So I always think about like, when you go to some of those cities, or when like we traveled abroad, you get like the day pass of like, hey, you can go to 4 things in this city. It's like, what are the things that can bring people to Jacksonville? And like, we don't have like a lot of those. Like we're zoo season, year-long annual holders. We like the beach, but are there like it feels like we're like a couple like attractions away from having something that can bring people. Because I like wonder, like, I love the 4 seasons and all that going on, but like when people come to the 4 seasons, like what are they gonna in Jacksonville?
Great question.
Yeah, so I always think of that as like, man, I think we're like an aquarium and something else away from, having kind of more of that, maybe tourism that isn't like event focused. Because obviously Florida, Georgia, and like our kind of the people, I forget what organization it is, but the people that are bringing kind of athletic events to town, I seem to be seeing a lot more of that kind of in recent years. But like what's going to bring like a family like mine on a summer vacation, to Jacksonville? Because it seems like combining the beach with a few more things like that, could really be a great destination. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, you brought up Florida, Georgia, and the reason I'm actually a little bit concerned is we're not going to have Florida, Georgia for a couple of years. So like we're going to lose some economic impact. The Jags clearly aren't going to be playing here. We're going to lose some economic impact there, and I'm a big believer that we should. I think it's criminal. This is just me speaking freely, that we don't have an aquarium. We have an ocean. We have an intercoastal. We have a river. We have ponds for days. We have water out the yang, dude, in all different shapes and sizes. How we don't have an aquarium to showcase it is insane to me.
Yeah.
I hope we fix that. And what I've told Jim and what I've told Gregory and what I've told some members that I know that work downtown is, I'm from Austin, and I've seen Austin before. I've seen Austin after. Yeah, we've seen Nashville before. We see what Nashville looks like now. Well, what they have in common is they're a large city who happens to be in a tax-free state, and they have a river flowing through the heart of downtown.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar. So we're a big city in a tax-free state with a river flowing through the downtown. I think we need to do something about it. I think we need to, if it's attractions, if it's things that are like more like restaurants where people can sit and overlook the water, more like top house type, but maybe a little bit more casual.
Yeah, accessible for some people. Yeah.
But I agree. I think not only do we need to bring in those landmarks or those activities, they need to be semi close together. Because the Centennial Olympic Park, the College Football Hall of Fame, the aquarium, the World of Coke, all that stuff, like you can walk to all of those things. Nashville, you go on Broadway, you can go to the Bridgestone Arena and watch the Predators play, and you can walk up and down that thing and go see the orchestra, among many other things. And Austin's very famous for their walkable streets. So
yeah, and I think this is part of the conversation maybe with the Gateway area. I can't remember, but something when I went to Palm Beach Atlantic University, so in West Palm. And I know like one of the main roads that they have where like all the bars and restaurants are, where you find people every weekend, they ended up kind of closing those off and putting pavers down, and it's just like pedestrian. And and that's a cool kind of environment. I think it encourages some of that, because I know downtown, things are going to figure out are like parking and safety. I know it's like what I hear from,
yeah,
like,
it's huge.
As far as when I remember like Clay County kind of objections to downtown, or like those kind of big things. So
yeah, I'm a big like fan of the Atlantic Beach Town Center. It's very walkable, and you can go to all these different things. But parking is a problem. Safety's not a problem, but parking's a problem. So I hope that they address that at some point. Maybe just like a small garage that's like multi-tiered. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think there's a way to fix that. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. You can get a different pioneer and builder on to solve that one. Yeah.
That's what I need to do. I need to get like architects and like people who are actually building these structures and pick their brains on what they're thinking.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. For people who want to help or reach out, like let's say they want to talk about UNF stuff, PS27 stuff, Youth Crisis Center stuff, where can these people find you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I don't like post a lot. I don't have a podcast like you or anything, but that's kind of where where people can easily find me. If you Google me, that's probably what comes up. But yeah, happy to talk about any of those things that I'm involved with. And you reminded me I need to connect you with some of these Youth Crisis Center to come on your baby.
Yeah, would love to have them.
Talk to. Yeah.
Awesome.
They'll do a better job than I like fumbled through. So, and they could probably tell you more about they know what the MILS stands for, I'm sure.
I want to point out the way when you said MILS, you went through the M, the I, the L, and then you said something. And the reason the reason I was laughing is because the S in MILS, like when you said something, it could just fit.
Yeah.
I found that to be really funny.
That was funny. I didn't catch that. But yeah, I want to connect you there and know that great organization.
That would be great. Okay. So anybody listening, Caleb Garrett on LinkedIn. If you find 50 Caleb Garretts, just narrow it down to Jacksonville, Florida. You'll find the one.
Okay, UNF, yeah.
Awesome. Caleb, this was great. Any parting words or wisdom?
Yeah, man, I love it. I love Jacksonville, so I love what you're doing here and love hearing about, like you said, there are a lot of people like Greg Grant when I listen to that episode. Like I've met him plenty of times. He used to work for the SBDC here at UNF, but that's like I always learn something when I'm listening. Since it's Jacksonville focused, it's like really applicable, I feel like, in a lot of ways. So I love what you're doing.
I appreciate that very much, man. And I'm very happy that you could be a part of this. Obviously, I'll get this packaged up and edited and sent out, man, but people are going to hear your story very soon.